Hi everyone. Well, it's that time of year again. It's another Barnes & Noble Criterion half-price sale. I have word that it will be starting November 4th and going through November 28th. So what I'm going to do is sort of recap recent releases from Criterion. You can get big savings, the biggest savings probably from box sets and but also from recent releases, because Amazon does normally, as the titles become older, they tend to discount them, sometimes half priced. So I've got 10 movies here, recent releases, and I love them all. I'm being honest here. I recommend all of these. So I thought we'd start with the 4Ks. And first off, Devil in the Blue Dress. From 1995, directed by Carl Franklin, who supplies a commentary on this film, on this release. And it's often labeled a neo-noir, which it certainly is. In the 1990s, there was sort of a revival of noir films. Devil in the Blue Dress is set at the end of World War II in Los Angeles. It's a terrific recreation of Central Avenue and the black community there, that many of whom had emigrated from Texas, Louisiana, as had Easy Rawlins, played by Denzel Washington. And this is also the debut film for Don Cheadle, and he plays Mouse. If you've ever read the novel that this was based on, or any of the other novels in the Easy Rawlins series, that is absolutely perfect casting. So we also get a murder mystery here, but we also get a longing for a sense of community. And in the supplements, we get an interview. Not only do we have the Carl Franklin commentary, which is essential, but we get a conversation with Walter Mosley, who wrote the Devil in a Blue Dress and the Easy Rawlins novels, and I think they're still ongoing. Highly recommend that interview. Mosley is really interesting. And also his books. I've only read about a half dozen. I think there's around 17 of them. And it looks fantastic on 4K. My only criticism of Criterion is how they often use tiny little fonts that you can't hardly see, with black backgrounds, and very strange selection of fonts sometimes on the back cover and even on the foldouts. Another 4K was Virgin Suicides. This is Sofia Coppola's debut film from a debut novel by Jeffrey Eugenides, who's featured in some of the supplements. It's about teenage longing, awkwardness. The title is the spoiler. We're going to get suicides, and in the novel, it's interesting how the movie is very faithful to the novel, but the novel focuses on the boys, their sense of wonder at these family of four sisters, and what happens to them. Sofia Coppola kind of changes the point of view much more to the girls themselves. Kirsten Dunst being one of the sisters, and the beginning of her collaboration with Sofia Coppola going forward. And there's a making of documentary here that's really excellent in the supplements, that was filmed by Sophia's mother, Eleanor. We get to see some really great behind-the-scenes footage when her father, her famous father, Francis Coppola, visits the set. She wrote a really good screenplay based on Eugenides' novel. And then the final 4K that I've purchased in the last few months is Night of the Living Dead. I did a video discussion of it for Halloween. And this is a film I hadn't seen in 50 years. And I'm not the biggest horror fan. But I wanted to see it again, and I didn't have the Blu-ray Criterion had released as a Blu-ray and then upgraded to 4K. So I bought it in the flash sale. George Romero's first film. I was surprised how well made it was. I mean, the 4K, I wouldn't have thought this was a candidate for a 4K, but it certainly looked terrific. It was filmed in 35 millimeter. It's a very grim movie. I mean, extraordinarily grim compared to, say, the horror films of the 1950s. Much more a reflection of its time: Vietnam, Kent State, My Lai massacre, Sharon Tate murders. This is sort of like, even though it might not have been intended as such, you couldn't possibly make a film in those days, at least a film of some merit, without reflecting the times, the crazy times that we were all living in. Two commentaries. I listened to one with George Romero, but there are a tremendous amount of extras on Night of the Living Dead that you know, I spent a whole morning combing through. Now, there's other 4Ks that have come out recently. I think Lost Highway, Raging Bull, movies that, you know, famous movies by famous film directors, and you don't need me to recommend them, but I certainly would recommend them. By getting to the Blu-rays, this is Drive My Car from 2021, Raisuke Hamaguchi, a Japanese director who's really come into prominence, particularly with this film, but I've seen 3 of his other films, and he is really an excellent top-flight director. I'm not going to miss any of his upcoming movies. And this is a story about an actor slash director, stage director, and he is mounting a production of Uncle Vanya at a Hiroshima art center. We get to see a good bit of Hiroshima, including the Peace Park. And it's a story, he's grieving the loss of his wife, who had recently passed away. So he's suffering with grief. So the film works through his problems as in light of how art can be a form of consolation. But he also develops a friendship with the driver. He can't drive. He's not allowed to drive himself because of some accident that had happened in a previous art center festival. So he discovers that this rather taciturn driver is also in need of comfort and consolation, and they develop a really interesting and quite moving friendship. And next up, Hotel du Noir, my most recent video discussion release. This is from 1938 and directed by Marcel Carné, the height of French poetic realism. It really is gives you a real sense of the different varieties of love. Of course, poetic realism sort of focused in on romantic fatalism, romantic despair, and the element that many people felt of needing to escape one's life, trying to find an escape from one's disenchantment with one's own life, and whether that seemed impossible. So it's romanticism with a capital R, to be sure. There's a really good documentary on Marcel Carné's career, which I have he's been a forgotten director. I saw 3 or 4 of his movies many years ago, sort of forgot about him. Never saw this one. It's beautifully photographed in black and white with fantastic sets by the absolute genius. I don't use genius as a word too much, but Alexander Troner is definitely falls into that category with his set design. Here he designs a whole street scene. This is a movie about ordinary people who live in this Hotel du Noir, and the kind of family that is depicted, where the residents come together, they eat together, people that are sort of a little bit lost in life, but they have that family that they can come back to, that they can gain sustenance from at the Hotel du Noir. And this is one of the big surprises of the year for me. Hotel du Noir, highly recommend it. Next up is Mr. Klein, and this is starring Alain Delon, directed by Joe Losey from 1976. Set in Paris in the 1940s, prior to a famous roundup where Jews all through Paris were rounded up and taken to a sports arena before they were transported to Auschwitz. Mr. Klein is not Jewish, but there is another Mr. Klein in Paris who is trying to foist his identity onto the Alain Delon Mr. Klein. And so it becomes sort of a mystery story and a story of a man who becomes lost in his obsession with finding the other Mr. Klein. A great performance by Alain Delon. Very unusual one he really wanted to play, that he was really proud of. One of the supplements is called Story of a Day, which is a 1986 documentary which covers that day in Parisian history when all the Jewish people were indeed rounded up. And next, Round Midnight, and Round Midnight is from 1980, and Bertrand Tavernier directed it. Dexter Gordon, a famous sax player, is the lead character. It's set in Paris, 1950s. It's not a fictional account of Dexter Gordon's life, but there are similarities, and Dexter Gordon was not an actor, but he is absolutely superb in this film. And he was in his 60s, Gordon, when he made the film, and the character he's playing has been worn down by life and drugs and unhappiness. So he's still a legend. He plays a bit choppy in the beginning, but then he is befriended in the film, befriended by a fan, and the film then focuses on the value of friendship itself and regaining a sense of purpose to life. And one of the supplements here that's not to be missed is a recording of Dexter Gordon in 1969 when he was at his height, where he really lays it out there. You can see the greatness of Dexter Gordon as he performs one of his famous pieces, Fried Bananas. Next up is Summertime. Summertime is from 1955. It is a David Lean film. The first film he made when he left Britain, he was very much identified as a British filmmaker, and now he is embarking on his international journey that starts out in Venice. And this is Katharine Hepburn playing a spinster from the Midwest. That's what they were called, unmarried middle-aged women. And she comes to Venice for her one great adventure, because she needs it. She needs something to go back home with that she'll never forget. Rossano Brazzi is there while he give her adventure. Again, a film that's set in Venice. I love Venice as a film set. This is the picture postcard view of Venice, but it's just a beautiful vision. It's the vision of Venice as Katharine Hepburn's character would have experienced it. And there is, in the supplements, there is a really good interview with Melanie Williams, who wrote a book on David Lean, who said in subsequent years, he regarded Summertime as his favorite film. And I think I would agree with him on that. Tales of Hoffman from 1951. This is from The Archers, Michael Powell, Emmerich Pressburger. I would say this is my favorite film that I've seen so far in 2022. I saw it in the movies or in a repertory theater. Actually, it was a film society, packed house, beautiful print. It was so gorgeous, it knocked my socks off. I never wanted to get it. I think it probably was on VHS, DVD, I'm not really sure. But I never wanted to see it again because the memory of how beautiful it was in the theater, I didn't think it could be recreated. But in Blu-ray it is, and this is a gorgeous Blu-ray. We have Jacques Offenbach's music. It's developed from his opera. And again, a film that, although it's about romantic despair, Tales of Hoffman is E.A. Hoffman, who was a romanticist with a capital R in the heyday of Goethe and German Romanticism. But it's also about the joy of artistic creation. Not just the beautiful music by Offenbach, but the archers and all their collaborators here. This is just a fantastic, gorgeous looking film. It was George Romero's favorite film. He's on the supplements here, and he tells us, you know, as a boy living in New York City, he actually had a copy of it at one time. And Martin Scorsese, there was sort of like a library where you could get, I guess, 16mm copies. And if they were out, he learned later it was probably Martin Scorsese who was renting the film. And there is an audio commentary here with Scorsese. And 10th and last, The Worst Person in the World. And this is directed by Joachim Trier. This is from 2021. And this is the third of what has loosely been called Trier's Oslo trilogy. I watched the first two. The other two are also very much, they're available on streaming. It's a film set in Oslo, obviously being an Oslo trilogy. The location, I don't think I've seen too many films made there, so we get a real good sense of the city in all three films, but especially in this. And there's a very playful visual style here, and the lead performance by Renata Renziv. I probably am not pronouncing her name correctly, but it's very, very much engaging as we see what young people in Oslo, what their city looked like and what their relationships were like. It's a movie that, as I said, playfully very visual. There is a supplement here, not to be missed, the famous, what's becoming a famous time freezing sequence in the movie, which is just absolutely magical. And this short documentary shows the filming and how difficult it was to film that sequence. So those are the 10 recent releases that I highly recommend. This is not, I'm not saying everything's great, but they're all really worth seeing. And I just want to mention Exotica, which I haven't seen since it came out. And I'm going to watch tonight, which has as part of the supplements on Exotica, which was from 1994 from Adam Agoyan, we get his earlier movie Calendar from 1993. So we get 2 movies for the price of 1 with this selection. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I hope you have a great time at the Barnes & Noble sale. I'm not sure what I'm going to get. I know I'm getting Infernal Affairs and probably 1 or 2 other of recent releases. Okay, enjoy your sale at Barnes & Noble. Take care.